Hello, and welcome back. The SHSU MBA Student Association is excited to present the Spring 2021 MBASA Virtual Book Club. My name is Jonathan Kinsey, and I'm the Vice President of the MBASA. Today we'll be discussing Rumbling with Vulnerability, the first section of Brene Brown's New York Times bestseller, Dare to Lead. But before we dive in, if you're not already following us, be sure to subscribe, find us on Instagram, join our group me, and ring that bell for more content. The MBA Student Association is all about building networks and building careers, so let's get connected. More details are in the description below. For those listening in that may not be as familiar with the book, let's recap a few things. Dr. Brene Brown has researched and authored several books surrounding courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. Dare to Lead organizes this research into 4 sections that aim to help cultivate readers into braver, more daring leaders. Today's discussion is focused on the first section, Rumbling with Vulnerability. So with us today are a few of my colleagues that have joined me in reading through this first section on vulnerability. Brene provides many practical exercises in the book to help readers get vulnerable and build courage for what she calls rumbling. So I figured we could kind of do one of those exercises called permission slips and use it as a way to get our discussion started. So the idea here is that you're supposed to consider obstacles that might get in the way of showing up for learning, getting started, or working together, and those kinds of things. So as Brene says, what stands in the way becomes the way. So I'm going to go ahead and start. And as I mentioned, my name is Jonathan, and I'm a little bit over halfway through my MBA right now. And I'm going to give myself permission inside of this conversation to kind of slow down and really kind of get into the discussion and actively listen to what both Clayton and David have taken away from the book as well, as kind of getting into a good discussion about what was going on in the book as well. Clayton, do you want to go ahead and go?
Yeah, of course. My name's Clayton Cottle. I would give myself permission to absorb other perspectives for sure, and to be more courageous and sharing in my own perspectives in this conversation. David?
Hey, yeah, David DeVoe. I'm actually an alumni and a former or past president of the MBA Student Association, so I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to give myself permission to not worry about screwing up. So there you go. Look, already done it. And not to be a perfectionist, which is something she talks about in the book. So I'm trying to put her book into practice already. There we go. Hopefully it works out.
Yeah, no, I feel very much along those lines as well. I know you were just talking just before we got started about like this is probably one of the best ways to do this, and putting that book in practice is doing it live and unedited, and here we are being kind of putting ourselves out there in a way.
Yeah.
So what were you going to say, Clayton?
No, I was just agreeing.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Continuing on kind of this theme of vulnerability and putting ourselves out there, Brene's research kind of identifies 10 different behaviors and cultural issues that leaders identify as getting in the way within organizations across the world. I've kind of selected a few discussions or points that she mentioned in her list. So for those watching on the stream today, as we kind of get through and discuss some of these things, please feel free to chime in on the live chat. We'll be checking in here on that in a little bit, and we'd love to hear from you. So the first kind of one that she mentions that's kind of like an issue, behavior, or something like that, that's on her top 10 list is we avoid tough conversations, including giving honest and productive feedback. And I guess I know I definitely am one to do that. So will either of you share some of your experiences around those issues?
Yeah, I could kickstart this. It's something I also have trouble with, and it's something I have to do regularly for work. And I really haven't found a way to overcome that angst that comes with giving someone feedback or an opinion that runs counter to what they would like to hear, especially when they're in a position of authority over me. So I'm all ears.
I actually, I don't think I struggle with this one, to be honest with you. I think if anything, maybe I can go the other direction too much. So I just remembered, as you talking about this makes you remember being in grad school the first time through the MFA program. I remember talking to one of my colleagues then, and it was like, I don't understand why they won't let me work with any of the younger undergrads. And she was like, because you're the dream crusher. And I was like, the dream crusher? I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're too honest with people. She was like, all these poor freshmen would come in and you'd be too honest with them and they would just leave because you would crush their dreams of being like a professional dancer. And I was like, well, most of them aren't going to be professional dancers. And she's like, exactly. There you go. I was like, okay, noted. So, yeah, I mean, that said, I can definitely be the encourager too. But yeah, I think I like the open honesty, like for like Ray Dalio. I don't know if you're familiar with Ray Dalio, but that's like his company there. It's I forget his term, but it's almost like brutal honesty, like, and they record all meetings, like they're just, everything is about being honest and open, and everyone should be allowed to say everything and feel like they have the space to say what they need to say, because it just makes the organization better.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, I also knew David because David was actually in this. We did the same first master's program. So David was actually
Thought you were
on
gonna say
my.
Dream Crusher.
Yeah.
What'd you say? What
He
did
thought
you
he was
say?
gonna. He thought I was going to say you were my dream crusher.
Oh.
But no,
Maybe
I
should
mean,
have
like
been.
it.
Who knows?
Maybe so. But no, David was my one of my committee members on my thesis, and so like getting a lot of really honest feedback from those people that I really kind of come to trust and stuff, and just in general, I think the creative arts and the creative world. That's kind of what I guess I was going to speak to a little bit on my end. Is I think that I've had to managing some people that are designers and other kind of creative folks. I think is a weird place to be sometimes because creativity is so personal to so many people, and I think that it's getting over, like, I don't know, having to figure out how to build that with a team of people is really really challenging. And I definitely think that what Brene is kind of some of the things that she's kind of deployed in the book are definitely things that I think I have taken into practice too. Like, just being like, what, I'm just going to be honest. Like I'll be the first one to say that I don't like what I just did. So, I think what I designed was terrible. So you did a much better job. So, and I think that kind of having that rapport with my colleagues kind of helps break down some of those walls. But did any of y'all have anything else to add on that?
I'm curious, actually, David, from the other end of things, where you are really good at having those tough conversations, honest, productive feedback. How do you approach those situations? Like, is there a certain mentality, or is that just something that's just natural?
Good question. Probably a little bit of both. So I think being the middle child of 7, I've always been sort of a mediator. So I've always kind of had to like have that role. And I don't know, I feel like that's played into the ability to be able to be honest with people, but also, I guess, also take them into consideration as well. Like I'm not a mean, honest person. You know what I mean? Like there's those people who we've probably all had those people in charge of us, or we know those kind of people who are, they're like, oh, I'm just honest with people. And it's like, no, you're like, actually, can I say a-hole on this stream? I mean, but you know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you like get enjoyment out of being mean to people. And like, that's not what she's talking about here. Like about being honest. It's her, what she's talking about in this honest role is like, is not lying to people and then talking about them behind their back, or just being like, oh yeah, you're doing a great job. And then, firing them 3 months later. And it's like, you could have just been honest with them up front. And so for me, I can't help it. Like I have to be authentic and honest with people. That I have like this driven thing inside of me that just makes me do that. So there's that aspect of it. But I guess I also mix a lot of humor though with it. So I have been told people are like, you can say things that other people can't say, and they're like, I don't know what it is. They're like, but when you say it, it's totally fine. But if someone else were to say it, they'd be like, oh, he's such an a-hole, or like. So I think there's a little bit of my personality that has always allowed me to be honest with people, where they feel like I'm got their best interests at heart as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would say I definitely found it refreshing. So that was very much appreciated. Oh man. So I guess that kind of covered a couple of other questions that I had on that particular one. So let's move on to the next one. So one of the other ones that she mentioned as being kind of an issue that most people would, most leaders would, I guess, identify that as, is not enough people are taking smart risks or creating and sharing bold ideas to meet changing demands and the insatiable need for innovation. So, what are some smart risk behaviors that you think would be good to implement, or that you want to implement to kind of really change either things within your own sphere of influence, or that you think others that may be struggling to do that should do?
So this is actually one that's like really close to like who I am fundamentally, in that I mean, I've started a brand that's along these lines of supporting people that are stuck in this, but it's that 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 ability to break through to just believing in yourself, just taking a risk on your dreams and really pushing through. If it's your dream, I totally think it's a smart risk. Even if you fail or even if you succeed and no one else sees that you've succeeded, it's your dream. So I feel like there's not enough of the personalities that adopt this train of thinking, and I feel like it doesn't allow people to unlock their full potential.
David, what do you think about that? Yeah, I think a big problem is just that it's that whole fear of failure, and it's where that's ingrained in us since we're like kids. Though, is like you're not supposed to screw up, or like every time you screw up or every time you fail at something, there's something either wrong with you or there's something you should have done to prevent it. And it's like just going the way through our education system, like it always seems like it comes back to being our fault. And so after so long of that, you get to the place where you're just like, well, I don't want to be a failure anymore. Or I don't want anybody to see me fail because I'm so tired of being corrected, or I'm so tired of being in that place. And it's like, I don't remember what book I was reading, but it was talking about just the fact that like, if you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. Like you're not actually taking risk in life. And like, that really sunk into being like, oh my God, that's to me, that's even scarier than failing, is realizing that, wait, if I'm succeeding all the time, it's because I'm probably consciously choosing to do things I already know I'm going to be good at, or I already know I'm going to be able to accomplish. And then you're just kind of coasting through life. And so you were asking like, what would you do? Like, I almost think it's like you should be able to set up an atmosphere in your workplace to where whoever the people that you're leading to be like, hey, like, we're going to have who's got, almost not necessarily like a competition of who's got the biggest fail, but like having a fail meeting or something, like, and then like acknowledging it and almost celebrating it and being like, that's amazing. Let's all talk about how we failed this last month and why and what came out of that, and the exciting things of like, how can we move on from there? And to know that we are all contributing to raising the bar. We're all contributing to like making things better.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Clayton.
I think Elon Musk said this, but it's like failure is accepted here, and that's one of like the pillars of his organization. I agree with that, and I also like to kind of what you're saying, David, about how we fear failure so much that if we're always succeeding, we may not be setting these bars high enough. Is that I feel like in these programs, for example, there's multiple times SMART goals come up, and I've always felt like the A, attainable, is very limiting, because you know everything's about data and metrics now. You're always being measured. Are you going to achieve that goal? So like subconsciously, if I'm making a SMART goal that I'm going to be evaluated on, my A for attainable is going to be 80% efforts because I know I can hit it, and anything above is just above. And so I think that that's like where failure could become to be adopted, to where you're not held against if you don't hit that metric, and you're encouraged to set attainable further back, push the field post back or goal post.
Yeah, wow, that's such a great point, because I mean, unfortunately, it's like almost every business that's, like every leader, manager, whatever, like you have to do evaluations on your employees, and it's to keep things, quote unquote fair. But this idea that you're being evaluated based off of those specific metrics, and so yeah, I mean, it's way easier, like you said, to set a goal that is way under what probably could happen, but is easily obtainable. So then you can say you beat your goal. Like, I mean, just look, let's say companies like with the market, for instance, like,
earnings,
like you set those earnings per share. Yeah. And it's like, well, how many shares can we buy back this quarter? And then be like, yeah, let's mix that. So it's like, oh man, if we're not going to earn quite as much as we thought, maybe we could buy $1 million more, $1 billion worth of shares back. And then look, oh my God, we beat estimates. It's like, it makes you think there's like this unspoken game between the analysts and the companies, that it's like, hey, so like take whatever you really think we should be earning, cut 25% off that, and then we'll go 50% above that, so our stock price can go up, so we can all keep this cycle going, right? But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but most companies that were created around this culture of like, we have to beat whatever our goal was last time or whatever last quarter, and we're so driven by that, and it does stifle innovation, unfortunately.
Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking a little bit about this, and I know for me, like, I feel like I've definitely stayed in the safe zone a lot. I like stay in my lane, and I just am really good at that lane, and I go. But at the same time, like, I think that there's a drive to, want to achieve things and want to do stuff like that. But I think that I know in 2020, with the pandemic and everything else like that, all this extra, like all of a sudden everyone's super productive and we have all this extra time and we got to figure out, like what we want to do with it because we're bored at home or whatever the situation is. And for me, like I found myself taking on these like risks of trying new things. Like, okay, cool. Like, like let me try to see if I can start a business, or let me see if I can try to get into the stock market, or if I can do some of these things. And oh, it was bad. It was real bad. But I felt like, I did something, and I felt like that feeling of doing something. And even though it was terrible, I like learned a lot about like, well, I know that's not the way to do that. Or I know that I did something and it feels good that I did it. And I can say that. So even though there was failure, it was enjoyable because the journey was enjoyable, and I think that's kind of a good way to say that, maybe.
I saw someone holding a sign. It was on social media at some point, and sometimes like the cardboard signs say funnier things, and it says something like, "Don't be afraid to suck at something new." And I was like, yeah, that's a good way to put it, because I mean, you always suck at whatever's at your first run at something. I'm curious your guys' opinion if, like, at a macro level or like a really broad level, this point of people being afraid to take risk and how it may impede innovation. And this may be way too beyond, but how has that shaped humanity? Because I mean, I guess it's not a new like principle or a new fallacy in our being. Like, how has that prohibited our growth and innovation?
I mean, the biggest example I could think of just off the top of my head is probably in the political arena, without going into politics, but just this idea that, like, I mean, if you want to talk about status quo, that's the epitome of status quo. So I just know that just looking at who our elected representatives are, there have to be people with better ideas out there. But they probably talk themselves out of even moving into that arena or going in that direction, because you immediately tell yourself, well, I mean, I'm never going to accomplish that, or like nothing, or going either with the idea that like, well, nothing ever really gets accomplished, with government, so why even try? Or, I'll never get elected because I'm just too way out on the fringe, or I have it's not the status quo of my ideas. So that's, for me, I think that's probably the most detrimental thing to our country, I think, is the fact that we don't have new blood coming into politics all the time. I think that would move our country forward immensely if we could get that to be accomplished.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree, and I think that's kind of, I don't know, that's a super hard question, Clayton. Just because it's very broad and trying to pin that down to something specific. But I think, David, what you had to say about it was very, that's kind of like where I was like, I want to say something about this, but I don't know like how to articulate it, because that's kind of, I guess it is the status quo idea is very, very much all about not taking risks. And I think that's kind of definitely in that vein. I think that the next one that she had that I picked out, I don't let's see. It could be, I don't know. I'm trying to see if there's a connection there or not, but I guess let's just find out. So the next one that she had was diminishing trust caused by a lack of connection and empathy. And so I'm wondering if there's a connection there with status quo, because I feel like there might be. But the question that I had kind of paired with that, we've kind of touched about a little bit already, but inside of the context of the book, she's got all of these great frameworks and different things that she's kind of like throwing out here and there, and are those, which ones of those, I guess, speak to kind of these connections between these different ideas, and or also which ones maybe have you started implementing in your own life and stuff? I know that
you lead this one off.
Okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll give you something. Yeah, no. So I think that with this, like some of the stuff that we talked about in that first one, with the avoiding tough conversations and kind of some of those things, I think one of the things that she talked about a lot was like shame and fear and some of these other like negative kind of emotions. And I think that whole idea of being vulnerable and being brave, like I think the idea of being brave and being courageous kind of stuck out to me and resonated with me the most. And so it's like, be brave to make that connection, right? Or make that, just say, hey, like, I feel this way right now. And I've started doing that. I think a little bit is, like I've been like, hey, I'm thinking this, and I don't know if that's right or if I'm crazy or if that's like, but this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. Please talk to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is where I'm at. I think that kind of really does start a lot of conversations, and kind of help at least get other people's insight, understand where they're at and kind of connect with them on that level. And I think that trying to tie that back to your question that you asked us, Clayton, I think that that's something that she's presented inside of one of her frameworks that could potentially, help in a way with something like status quo or something that may be going into something like politics.
Yeah, I think I agree. I like, as you were talking, I've kind of started to see that connection as well. And that I often think of things much broader, and it's hard for me to get down into things, but just thinking about the different social issues that we face and how a lot of it could be resolved just with simple empathy and understanding, connecting with somebody. And I do think that, like how she talks about permission slips and those types of things, I think they're beneficial, but I think it's a two-way street. I can give myself permission to talk to you, and divulge my emotions, but I need you to give yourself permission to accept those and understand where I'm coming from. And I think that without that, that link can't be made, or at least it's hasn't been able to be made for me.
I would say I agree. Like, I think that I don't know. Trying to listen more to people and trying to understand them has been a big thing. I think that I've on my journey is trying to just say something simple, something short, and then let people respond, and then see what's going on, and kind of get a feeler. Try that way I can make a connection with them, because I love telling stories. I love speaking forever and just going on and on and on and on. So trying to really prevent myself from doing stuff like that, I think allows other people to speak. But you're right. I think that's like it only goes so far if no one's willing to connect with you. And I think that is definitely something that maybe something that our generation and people and like popular culture and different things that are going on right now probably need to do more of is being willing to give themselves permission to talk to other people and communicate inside of conversations they wouldn't normally have. I think one of the other ones that she touched on as well had to do with stuff like diversity, inclusion, and like kind of privilege in the sense that if you're silent, that's really more privilege than it is like you're exerting your privilege more than engaging and connecting with other people. And so, like, if you're not going to do that, then it's a problem. I don't know. I would think.
David, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, a few things. So I was going to say, from a leadership standpoint, like, you've got to set the example, obviously. I just was thinking about her military, that story from the woman in the military asking the soldiers about, how many of you are lonely, and starting that discussion and going down that route. But like, she, as the person in charge, had to initiate that conversation. And since this is, Dare to Lead, so we're looking at this from the framework of being a leader. I think if you live the talk inside of the meeting and you lead the people that direction, it's going to be very clear who's going to follow you and who isn't. And then you can maybe start to work on those people who maybe aren't following in those footsteps, because it would be very easy, obviously, to take the other side and be like, well, I tried to be vulnerable, I tried to be open, I tried to do this, but nobody's meeting me, so I'm just going to go back to the way things were, or I'm going to go back to being guarded. But I think that's part of what she talks about, the vulnerability is and that whole, like, having that strong back, but that open, that soft front, is having the strength to endure, having the strength to keep going, and lead in that way. So, and I know for me with her, for me, I'm working on mostly is trying to get rid of the perfectionism. So that's been a big thing. I'm glad she brought that up, because it is more of it is funny how it's so fear-based. You're so afraid to not like to be, so you're so worried about what everybody else is looking. And so you're like, I always have to be perfect. I always have to get everything right. I always have to be at the top of my game. So that way nobody can see me fail, or no one can see me screw up. And if I do screw up, I can probably get away with it with humor, or be like, oh no, that's what I meant to do. So always trying to stay a step ahead of people in that way. But and then it's okay to like let that go, and how much stress that puts on your life. But I was gonna say, I read, because I previously read her other book, the Daring Greatly, like kind of sort of one of the predecessors of this book, and I just remember from that book just being like, damn, I just want to like try more things. I definitely want to get out there. So, and the most recent thing probably is actually I'm like this close to looking into like public service and running for something at some point soon. So I'm like, okay, I got to start actually like living this. So get out of. So that's where I'm
awesome.
going.
That is awesome.
It's exciting and terrifying. So kind of like starting a business, right?
Yeah.
Exciting and terrifying at the same time. Oh,
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
I think another question to kind of throw out there that I had that I was kind of thinking about was like in the idea of like being vulnerable, like how has that concept for you changed over time? What is it, like from like when you were younger to like maybe now? Like is was what like has the meaning changed? Has like the context in which you would be vulnerable changed?
I think,
Those kinds of
like,
things.
to me, and like, I don't know if you're even allowed to say things. This is a bad thing to say, but when I grew up, being vulnerable meant like getting caught with your pants down type of situations. So getting caught doing something you shouldn't, being embarrassed for doing something, and so that's what it meant growing up. But now, like as an adult, I feel like the living like that and being embarrassed for feeling getting caught doing something wrong or being ashamed or fearful, now being vulnerable to me is giving somebody access to my true person, giving them access to my emotions, giving them access to, like how David was saying, I use comedy a lot and how I communicate to people. And all, like, that's not really who I am. If I'm sitting down having a conversation, I may joke, but it's a lot of times I talk about deeper topics, and people that I interact with daily don't often get to experience that. And so the vulnerability to me now is trying to give those people, even if they're not in the work scenario, just passing someone or at a bus stop together or something, being vulnerable with them, connecting with them on a human level, giving them my emotions, and letting them know, like, oh, my life's not always great. How's y'all's changed?
I can speak to that. So me, growing up, I like lived with my heart just out there. Like I was just an open book. I really didn't care what other people thought. I just, I was just me. I was like, I don't care. Um, and then I will say, like, so I got married really young the first time, when I was an undergrad, and then got divorced a few years later, and like that was so crushing. That level of rejection, and not really understanding it. And so that, I mean, she talks about the armor when I read about her talking about the armor in her other book initially, but like, oh, that's like, it spoke to me very much, because that's exactly what I did. I was like, I'm never going through that again. Like that's never happening. So now I have to make sure I'm very guarded. I have to keep, like, I feel like my personality went from being led with emotion and led with my heart to my head, like always being logical about making decisions and not moving with emotion and not letting people in, or letting people think that they know who I am, but not really, like, or being who I needed to be accepted by these people, and being able to change almost like a chameleon in any situation to become who I needed to be, so I didn't have to worry about getting hurt. Uh, so, but so I've been working on that. I, for a while now, actually, I guess, but I still have a long way to go. Like I still just reading that up again, in her book about guarding the heart and the armor, and I was just like, yeah, it's probably still there. So not as bad as it was, 10 years ago, but definitely still there.
That's crazy,
Yeah,
man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
absolutely.
What about you,
I
Jonathan?
would probably, yeah, I'd say I would probably have something similar to say about that. I don't know, I guess maybe in a different way though, because I feel like I kind of was the opposite in a way. Like I started out very much with the armor on all the time, like so like very much like kind of the introvert, very much very guarded about things when I was real young, and so I think that um, as I kind of got older, it kind of it changed. I became more open, and a lot of that had to do with actually being able to reach out and connect with different people, right? And so being able to make friends and being able to do that as I went off to college and did those kinds of things, but also even at some point, as I became more comfortable with who I was and my sexual identity, like I became able to open up and to be able to actually connect with people, and then to gonna kind of really uh, like I don't know, get vulnerable with people and actually start to go, I'm not perfect and this is who I am, and This is, I don't know, the kind of people that I would rather be around are those more genuine people. And so finding those genuine connections and those kinds of things. And so that's kind of really shifted and evolved for me over time. But yeah.
Isn't it funny how so many people feel the need to guard who they are, so they don't have to worry about others' opinions of them, or they don't feel like they're I don't even know what I'm trying to say with that, but like we're all working in these social situations where we're not truly being ourselves. But from what I'm hearing is like everybody actually wants to be themselves and they want to accept people for who they are really at the end of the day, but we're so focused on trying not to be those people.
Yeah.
It's sad,
crazy.
actually, like to start to think about it. It's like,
It
gosh,
really
like if
is.
we could just all be honest and open with each other, like, whew, what a
We all
world we
want the
would live
same
in.
thing. We all want love and to be loved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think
That's deep.
yeah,
So
it's
deep.
real deep. Well, I mean, like, maybe that kind of really answers kind of maybe this little wrap up question we've got here, but I think we can go ahead and start wrapping things up. I don't know, maybe that's just a really good, simple answer to stuff, but what do you think would be a good way to naturally lean into harder, tough conversations? What's just a good way for y'all to do that? Maybe just a short answer.
David, I think you have to kick this one off. So I started this thing by saying that I wasn't the best at these.
How to lean into harder conversations. This is going to sound weird, but like maybe thinking less. So just like going with your first reaction to things. It's unfortunate, but I guess it's so like nowadays, everyone is so concerned about either losing relationships or like losing friendships or worrying about how what they do or what they say is going to affect someone else's reaction to that. Like you can control someone's reaction to begin with, but so just allowing yourself to be you and just see what happens. Like it's like I said, it's just we put so much pressure on ourselves to be like, oh no, I can't say this, I can't say these kind of things around these people, or I gotta, I can't talk about this around that person because they might get offended, or this person might get that. But like just end up like just do what actually we all talk about doing, like be yourself, live your truth, all that great stuff we talk about doing. But then most of us are so paranoid about what other people are going to think about us if we do that we don't actually do that. So then we end up being the people we think they want us to be. And then they're doing the same thing. So nobody's actually who they really are. So just be yourself. And I wanted to say this because I just think about it the whole time. And I think about it while I'm reading her book, but it's like going back to that stoicism idea of like, what is the worst that could possibly happen if, right? Like fill in the blank. Like if I said this, like what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Like if I take this leap of faith, or if I take this risk, like what is literally the worst thing that could possibly happen? And for some people that might affect your decision. Like some people it might be like, oh my God, yeah, this could be really, really bad. But at the end of the day, like I think most of the things we put too much pressure on ourselves and we make them too high stakes when they're really not.
Yeah.
So
I entirely agree with that.
Yeah.
Jonathan, what do you
Likewise.
think?
I think that I think that you were saying, doing that, but I think just I don't know, I'm gonna say just taking a risk. So it's similar on that as well. Like, like, okay, cool. Well, like I think using some of those little like phrases like, well, help me understand that, or let me, what do you mean by that? Or some of those little things like that can kind of really open up instead of just coming back with, well, whatever needs to happen. I think that by doing that, you're able to really start a good conversation and connect with people. So, and I'll leave it short like that.
Thank you for sharing.
Clayton, do you have one? Or
no, that was part of the part of the conversation I was just absorbing. This is one of the things that from this section that I'm really trying to work on is how to go about these. And so I don't really have any tips or anything. I'm really in a position to really learn this one. That's kind of where I've been focusing my efforts.
Gotcha.
There were
Well,
two
I
things.
think.
Sorry, can I real quick?
Go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
I really like. So one of the biggest things that stood out to me was just the simple phrase of "clear is kind, unclear is unkind." That was huge to me, and this goes back to that very first thing we talked about, but about being honest with people. Like, being clear with people is kind, and thinking of it that way. And the other one, I can't remember where it was. I can't find it, but it was quite a bit of conversation about talking about in the setting as a leader, like what is the end game necessarily of like what we're doing, and being clear about that. And she gives the examples of like, I can't remember the phrase off the top of my head, and I couldn't find it just now, but that idea of it, it's like going beyond like, what does this being a task being finished look like to you, and having a discussion about it so that everyone's on the same page at the end. So it's not just me giving you an order, and then when you actually do what I tell you to, you being like, oh no, actually what I meant was blah, and what about this? And you missed that. And it's like, well, you didn't say any of that. And it's like, well, I just expected you to know. And it's like, I can't read minds. So that was huge to me. So like that discussion back and forth, and the things that you discovered of like the biased or unbiased things that you were thinking, that you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. And those discoveries that can happen very quickly that just make things better and more efficient down the road. But that's it. Yeah. Sorry, those two things were huge to me.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. Well, I think that we've had a really great conversation. And so I'm going to say that as our discussion is starting to come to a close, I would like to thank both of you for being on the stream, courageously joining me today as we rumble with vulnerability together. And I'd also like to thank anyone that's watching or tuning in right now that also decided to read with us, but didn't want to join us for the discussion. So if you haven't had a chance to pick up the book yet, I would highly recommend it. And you're welcome to join us next time as we cover the next section. We would also really encourage you to tune back in tomorrow for our virtual panel discussion about the essentials of project management. Tune in to gain insight and advice on major topics, trends, and inflection points as they relate to project management. The panel discussion, moderated by Jamie, our treasurer, will be consisting of perspectives both from academia and industry. And our panelists will include Julian Garcia, HRIS Project Management Specialist at Westlake Chemical, and Dr. Pamela J. Zelps, Professor of Supply Chain Management and the Director of the Center of Innovation and Technology at Sam Houston State University. So, to all the College of Business students out there, I would strongly encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can stay up to date on what we're releasing. Join the MBASA Student Association and push yourself to engage with others. We've got a lot of information about how to get involved below in the description. So, with that, lastly, I would like to leave you with a quote from Brene. Courage is contagious. To scale daring leadership and build courage in teams and organizations, we have to cultivate a culture in which brave work, tough conversations, and whole hearts are the expectation, and armor is not necessary or rewarded. Stay courageous and be brave.